Iceberg start of the week for Week 16, and the honor goes to Bucs running back Bucky Irving. Irving was back in action against the Chargers after he left the game versus Vegas with a back injury, and when he's healthy, he goes off. At one point, guys, we were talking about him in the Offensive Rookie of the Year conversation. This week, taking on a Dallas team that tends to let opposing running backs just kind of rack up the fantasy points. You see it here in terms of PPR leagues, rostered in most of the leagues, starting in 53% of them. Here's where he stacks up with Jamie, Dave, and Heath. And again, 3 running backs in the past 5 games have scored at least 14.5 PPR points against the Cowboys. Jamie Eisenberg, Dave Richard, I'm Jacqueline D'Agostino. We are going to go through starts, sits, the whole shenanigans here if you made it to the playoffs for Week 16. So, Jamie, let's start with your start of the week, who is Bucky Irving. I already kind of like mapped out the Cowboys of it all, but why else do you think he's a must start and primed for a big week?
I think in prime time he's going to go off. You know, you said it, Jacqueline. It was great to see him come through the game last week against the Chargers after I think a lot of people were even concerned to start him because he didn't practice most of the week and dealing with that back injury. But he's been great when healthy. You know, the 13.3 PPR points that he got against the Chargers is kind of a low. He's been over 15 PPR points in 6 of his last 8 healthy games. And so the concern really is just how much work will Rachaad White get? Will he get some of the high-level touches? We saw him, score inside the red zone last year. He's going to get he's going to get a lot of opportunities catching the ball as well. But Bucky Irving has just been a special talent. And I just love what Liam Cohen's done with this run game. You mentioned that the Cowboys' run defense has been spotty at times. They've been better lately. I think a lot of that has to do with who they've played. But I think just the way that the Bucs run the ball, this game could be really fun. It could be a high-scoring affair with how these defenses have looked. So I like the setup for Bucky Irving to be a borderline #1 running back and have a huge game in prime time. And remind people that, yes, he should be in consideration for Rookie of the Year. He's not going to win it because of Jaden Daniels. But he definitely has been the best rookie running back this year and one of the best rookie players overall.
All right, so Jamie, let's get to the rest of your starts. And Brock Purdy is a start for you. And we were talking about high-scoring games. Of course, the Niners and the Rams was a very, very low-scoring game. But we know that Brock Purdy, when coming off of a loss, tends to kind of get a little chip on his shoulder, at least in terms of fantasy points. And it works out well for fantasy managers when he is coming off of a loss, Jamie.
That's 100% accurate, Jacqueline. You know, he doesn't lose very much, but this year he's lost more than I think a lot of people expected. So he's had 5 losses this year, and then he's responded in 4 of those 5 games with 26.5 fantasy points. And so we're looking at a Dolphins defense that's actually been really good against opposing quarterbacks, but we've seen them sort of bend, not break. I think we'll see an opportunity here, mostly because of George Kittle. I think he's going to have an opportunity for a huge game. Dolphins have really struggled against tight ends. And with the run game now being a little bit suspect, that we find out that Isaac Guerendo is not going to play, so they're down to Patrick Taylor again. So Purdy's not going to have the elements to worry about. It's supposed to be good weather here in South Florida. It's not the 1 o'clock start. It's a 4 o'clock start. Rare situation where the Dolphins are playing late afternoon Sunday game at home. So conditions won't be a problem. Defense, I don't think, will be a huge issue. So Purdy coming off a loss. He's been very good this season so far. I think he'll be good once again.
I think we can't state enough how important it is for Purdy that Guerendo's out. Okay. Because Guerendo being out means that it's guys like Patrick Taylor, Izzy Abanikanda, Kyle Juszczyk, their fullback. These are the players that are going to be playing running back for the 49ers, and these are not great running backs. These are fifth stringers. It's a fullback. It's a guy who was on a different team a month ago. And so more is going to have to fall on Brock Purdy's shoulders. I agree. I think he's a good low-end starter. But I saw vintage Aaron Rodgers last week, and I think Aaron Rodgers is another good start this week. There are a lot of quarterbacks that are good enough to be low end. They don't have a high enough ceiling. I think Aaron Rodgers has a high ceiling in what should be a high scoring game against the Rams. And the Rams really haven't been thrown on a lot. I think only 5 quarterbacks this year have at least 31 attempts, 3 of the 5 over 20 fantasy points. They've been run on plenty. But I don't know how healthy Breece Hall is. I know he's not on the injury report. That's a good thing. But push comes to shove, this offense is piloted by Aaron Rodgers. He was awesome last week. His receivers left yards on the field. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to finish as a top 12 fantasy quarterback this week. I think the Bears offense keeps moving against Detroit. They're beat up, and Brenton Strange was a hot waiver wire name. Listen to this. 5 games without Evan Ingram this year, at least 9.2 full PPR points in 4 of the 5. You know the game that he had last week as the security blanket for Mac Jones. I'm not sure if he's going to have as many targets from Mac Jones this week. I actually think the Jags are going to be able to run the ball.
My team's quarterback is being referred to as the security blankie.
Yeah, right. But that's what he was last week.
About the Jags.
I still think he could get in the neighborhood of 7 targets. He can catch 6 of them. Might not be as good in non-PPR, but in full PPR, this is a top 10 tight end this week.
Okay.
It's a great matchup. As you've seen from the Raiders, they just struggle to defend almost anything. And so top 5 in terms of most fantasy points allowed to the position. I think the DeAndre Swift call is really interesting, and I do like Swift as well. You've seen such a beat-up Detroit defense right now. They just lost one of their best run stoppers in McNeil. He's out for the season. Their secondary is beat up. Swift did not play well against them on Thanksgiving, but this is an opportunity for him to get the revenge that he did not get facing one of his former teams. So there's an opportunity here for Swift to be a number 2 running back. It's just a matter of how much fantasy managers will trust them, but I think it's a good call to call him a borderline starter for this week.
All right, Dave, let's get to your sits because Jordan Love is on here, and there's a sense around a lot of our analysts that we haven't seen the best of Jordan Love or the Packers just yet, but why is he on your sits here?
It's probably true. We haven't seen the best of Jordan Love, and we're not really going to see the best of him this week because we don't see the best of many quarterbacks against the Saints. You know why, Jacqueline? Because teams run like crazy against New Orleans, and that's what Green Bay's been doing for like the last month. Josh Jacobs is a must start, and Jordan Love, he's got between like 20 and 23 fantasy points in 4 of his past 7 games. That's okay. He's been under that 23 mark in every game since week 7. I don't know how much he's going to have to do. I don't know which wide receiver or tight end to trust. I think it's Josh Jacobs leading the way, and I think that's what carries Green Bay to a win against the New Orleans Saints. I was so unimpressed, by the way, with Brian Robinson last week. Had such high hopes, thought he'd have a great game. Now he's taking on Philadelphia. He scored against Philadelphia earlier this year. 4 games in his career, never 15 PPR points against the Philadelphia Eagles for Brian Robinson.
The Metcalf call is interesting because the Vikings are so bad against opposing wide receivers. They're number 1 in the position in terms of allowing fantasy points to wide receivers. And Metcalf has been absolutely awful. But he did get good news that Geno Smith is going to play. It would not shock me if Metcalf has his best game since coming back from the bye week, since coming back from that knee injury. But I don't think he's 100% healthy, so he's more of a number 3 receiver than a must-start guy. But it would not surprise me if he finds the end zone for the first time since week 6, just because how much fantasy points this Vikings defense allows. I'm really concerned about the Chiefs' passing attack in this game against the Texans. As we saw, they shut down the Dolphins, turned Tua Tagovailoa over 3 times. This offensive line is a problem for an injured Patrick Mahomes. I know he's not on the injury report. He's going to play. That's great for the Chiefs. It's not great for fantasy managers. Let's keep in mind what the season has been for Mahomes. He's coming into this game 3 straight games under 20 fantasy points. We've been begging for him to just be over that number, and that hasn't happened very often this season. So now you're asking him to play behind this offensive line with no DJ Humphries once again. Texans number 2 in most sacks, number 4 in fewest fantasy points allowed to opposing quarterbacks. It's going to be a little tough for Mahomes in this game. And in terms of DeAndre Hopkins, he's had a very solid season, but now you're throwing another wide receiver, solid tenure with the Chiefs. You're throwing another wide receiver into the mix with Marquise Brown expected to play, so who knows how much that impacts DeAndre Hopkins. Plus, Stingley is probably going to see a lot of Hopkins as well, the cornerback there for the Texans, who just had 2 interceptions and covering Tyreek Hill and shutting him down to under 40 yards receiving. So just feels like a very low-scoring game coming between the Texans and the Chiefs, which is unfortunate because you do have 2 playoff caliber matchup here. But I think just the way that Patrick Mahomes not at 100%, Hopkins dealing with a quarterback not 100% against a very good pass defense, I would try and sit the Chiefs' passing attack in this game on Saturday.
Not to mention Hopkins is not a full-time player. Jamie, we got to be really quick here, but Breece Hall, if he goes all week without any type of injury designation, does he come off your sit list?
So he did not practice yesterday, at least on Wednesday. But he did not have an injury designation. So something is still going on with Breece Hall. And if he does not practice, he will stay there. If he does practice, he will move up. But he's on the bust alert list, which is a borderline starter. I just don't like the setup for him. He will benefit, however, if Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis, who are both on the injury report, don't play.
All right, so really quickly, this is probably, my last fantasy segment with you guys. If I don't know, maybe not. If I keep winning in the playoffs, we don't know. But to that
Are you
point,
retiring?
No, but if I'm out, if I get kicked out, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Then you got to win.
They kick me off the segment, yeah. So I got to slide in one last personal question for old time's sake. I have Breece Hall. Would you start Charbonnet over Breece Hall?
I would if there's no Ken Walker. But Ken Walker limited, he didn't practice on Wednesday, and Zach Charbonnet
They both did practice on Wednesday.
Who did? Neither.
Both Seahawks running backs didn't practice on Wednesday, so you go with Breece Hall if they're both out. Obviously, I would go Hall over Charbonnet if Ken Walker plays.
Okay,
that's the way to do it.
I'll keep you guys posted.
Exclusive Dallas Cowboys report. What's up, Cowboys Nation? The season is over, and as always, our Cowboys are right in the middle of offseason buzz. What could have been a quiet offseason is quickly turning into a full-blown drama. And Jerry Jones never shies away from a great opportunity to strengthen the team. As the front office reflects on last year's successes and failures, a new development is emerging that could immediately impact the Cowboys' offense. We're talking about a player who, beyond his talent, has a deep connection to the state of Texas. Are you ready for this? Hold on to your hats, because what I'm about to share could be a game changer for our offense. After all, who wouldn't want to see America's team even more powerful heading into next season? Here's the bombshell. Mike Evans wants to return to his home state of Texas, and the Cowboys are negotiating a trade with the Buccaneers. That's right. Dallas is reportedly offering a second-round pick, an additional fourth-round pick, plus Jalen, Tolbert, and Neville Gallimore in exchange for the star wide receiver. Evans, one of the league's top wide receivers in recent years, has expressed interest in coming home. With the Buccaneers potentially heading into a rebuilding phase, trade talks are gaining traction. The Cowboys are trying to seize this moment to add a player who could transform the offense and bring the spark that was missing in 2024. This trade makes sense for the Cowboys, who already have a solid foundation with Dak Prescott and CD Lamb, but lack a second reliable weapon in the passing game. Mike Evans, with his ability to make tough catches and be a constant red zone threat, would be the perfect complement to the team's attack. Now, the big question is, do you think Mike Evans is the missing piece to turn the Cowboys' offense into an unstoppable force? Is it worth investing draft picks and young players to bring him to Dallas? Share your thoughts in the comments, spread the news with your friends on social media, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss an update on the Dallas Cowboys. This is your go-to place for all the latest on our team, delivered from fan to fan. Let's follow this potential blockbuster deal together and hope the Dallas Cowboys climb back to the top where they belong. Let's go, Cowboys Nation!